I'm going to try to address a lot of different things in this video. So the major component that we're going to discuss is something I've been hearing more and more about since quarantine has been going on, and that's plantar fasciitis. So a lot of people have been asking me questions. Their feet are hurting. Ever since the quarantine has been going on, it's encouraged to go outside and get activity, to go for walks and get some sun. So a lot of people have picked up a lot of additional running or walking. So people who wouldn't normally be going for runs or going for like tons and tons of walking and getting tons and tons of steps are now outside all the time doing all this activity, and their feet are starting to flare up, their heels and ankles are starting to flare up. So people have been asking me a lot of questions about how do I get rid of my pain or fix my plantar fasciitis. So we're going to discuss like what it is and kind of what causes it, and then we're going to get into more of a discussion about shoes. So people will say, well, what kind of shoe should I get? Because everybody says I'm not in the right type of shoe for me, or I need a more cushioned, or I need a more offset shoe, whatever it is. Everyone's first thought is, what kind of shoe should I buy? Because I'm probably in the wrong sock or the wrong shoe, and that's why my foot hurts. So we're going to talk about those things as well. Okay, so first off, what is plantar fasciitis? So usually when you hear itis connected to another word, it means kind of excessive inflammation in that area. So plantar fasciitis would be excessive inflammation of the plantar fascia. So the plantar fascia is I'm not going to show you guys my foot too much, but this is the plantar fascia is this big sheet of connective tissue that basically creates the structure of the bottom of your foot. So the plantar fascia basically runs from the back of the heel as an extension of the Achilles tendon, and then goes all the way up and connects kind of like to the outsides of your forefoot. So it's this big sheet of like a tendinous ligament sheet of connective tissue that goes from the back of the heel. It spans across the bottom of your foot, the sole of your foot, and then connects to the outside of your forefoot, almost like a V or a triangle type of shape. So what a lot of people might hear is, your plantar fascia is basically an extension and connection of your calf muscle. So when a lot of people hear they have plantar fasciitis, so inflammation of the bottom of your foot, or in connection to your heel, people will say like your calves are probably too stiff. Which in many cases is true. So people will probably hear, like when you have that inflammation, to roll on your foot or roll on your calf, which is a good idea. So basically, just to recap what I just said, plantar fascia, so your plantar fascia is on the bottom of your foot. So plantar fasciitis, basically what's happening is inflammation of that tissue, where it flares up and gets kind of stiff and cranky and starts to, create a very stiff and rigid foot, which becomes very unhappy and gives you a lot of pain. What causes plantar fasciitis could be a combination of many different things. So usually when there's an inflammatory response, so tendinitis, plantar fasciitis, all these different terms that you usually get diagnosed with when you have pain in a joint. Any injury like that is usually from overuse, which there's different reasons why that joint or tissue might be being overused. But what it comes down to is usually when you have an itis type of injury, so excessive inflammation, it's an overuse injury. So in the case of plantar fasciitis, there's too much impact and stress going into the foot and the ankle. And there's different reasons why that might be going on. So for people right now during quarantine, like I addressed in the beginning, some people might have really ramped up their running and walking while we've been sheltering in place. So some people who may have worked in an office and got 2,000 to 3,000 steps a day might be going out on runs or going out on really long walks. So the amount of time spent on your feet and moving yourself around using your feet may just be enough of an overuse to trigger some type of plantar fasciitis or discomfort. Same thing for a while, for me, for example, I typically run on trails. While the parks were closed, I was doing a lot more running in the road, so on the pavement. So if people aren't used to running on pavement or concrete or hard surfaces, that might be enough impact, added impact to cause an overuse injury as well. Another reason is that you may be, you know, physically kind of unprepared to do this running or all of this walking. Um, so, for example, if you were someone who wasn't really in great shape or was not really structurally balanced with a good workout program that includes warm up and cool down and maintenance work, if you were not in the habit of doing that, so if you're just more of like a weekend warrior who is working in an office and is now doing all this running, walking, or up on your feet doing stuff, you may so you may have structural imbalances in your ankle, your hips, and your core that are causing a lot of excessive stress on your joints. So for example, if you have really weak hips and weak glutes and a weak core, and you have trouble stabilizing the hip, knee, and ankle while you're running, you're going to take a lot of excessive impact at the foot and ankle as well. If you were someone who didn't used to do all this stuff and used to sit down all day and wear dress shoes or high heels at work, you probably have a really rigid and stiff ankle. And when you're running, you need a good amount of flexibility in the foot and ankle area. So if you have a really stiff ankle because you were someone who wore high heels or dress shoes or didn't move around a lot at work, and now you're trying to run, if your ankle doesn't bend very well and you're running up and down hills or on the road, you may be taking a really, really high amount of impact now in the foot and ankle that your body is not accustomed to. So, to discuss more about shoe options. So I actually, for most people, when most people have plantar fasciitis and they go to, a running store to look at shoes, or they talk to someone who's a runner, that person typically, I've found, will suggest getting a different shoe. So everyone will ask me, well, what kind of shoe should I wear? It's a hard conversation. It's a hard question to answer. I actually suggest, the shoe helps someone compensate for the problems that are already going on. So a lot of runners, you may have heard of like running with pronation. So someone might tell you like, oh, well, you probably overpronate. So that's basically where you kind of land on the outside of the foot, and so you land here and the foot starts to turn in when you land. So if you watch like slow motion videos of someone running, you might see them land and then their ankle kind of tilts and rolls and collapses inward. That would be like pronation, which causes the knee to collapse and the hips to collapse and causes a lot of issues. So they make running shoes to compensate for that pronation. So they shape it so that they take some of the pressure off your calf and off your heel and off your knee by re-angling your foot to compensate for doing that. So you land a little bit better. Which in the short term for somebody might help them feel better. It's the same thing like if you have high blood sugar, a doctor might give you a medication to bring it down. It's the same thing with the shoe. If you're pronating, they'll give you a shoe to help you not do that. But it doesn't actually fix or address the root cause of why you were doing that in the first place. So going back to the other example, if you have high blood sugar, you should probably look at your diet and your sleep and, why you might have had that issue in the first place instead of just taking medication. To me, it's similar with this plantar fasciitis issue. It's like I'm having pain in my foot. So, I go and get the quick fix, the more cushy and, angled and shoe with more support, so that when I put it on, it doesn't hurt, but it doesn't actually address and fix the issues that were going on. It just further compensates. And that's why people, when they buy a more cushioned shoe and a shoe with a bigger drop, so to explain what that means, when you buy shoes, the bottom of the shoe has a heel height, so how thick the heel of the shoe is, and it has a height in the front of where the ball of your foot is going to land before your toes. So the offset or the drop on a shoe is how much higher the heel is than the forefoot. So, for example, if the heel was 4 millimeters higher than the front of the shoe, that shoe would have a 4 millimeter drop. So the heel is 4 millimeters higher than the toes. So it tilts your foot forward. So some shoes Hoka's and Brooks running shoes, they're like a 10 millimeter, 12 millimeter drop. So their heel is about, 3 or 4 times higher in comparison to the toes than some other brands of shoes. Becoming more popular now is zero drop shoes. So that means the heel and the forefoot are the same height. There's no drop. It's completely flat. So what people suggest is like when you're a pronator, when you're running, you get more of a drop. Some people buy more cushion to try and compensate, to try and fix the problem of their foot hurting. Um, but it's just compensating for the problem that was already there, instead of actually trying to address and fix everything. So there is a shoe that's going to work better for everybody, but you shouldn't. There's a difference between needing a really cushioned shoe that has a big drop, and there's a difference between needing it to run, so you can't run without it or else it hurts. There's a difference between needing it or just wanting it because it's more comfortable and it provides, for example, if you're running a marathon, you might want a little bit more cushion with a little bit of drop because your legs are going to get really fatigued and you're going to be taking tons and tons of steps and going for a long time and long distance. So if you're doing something like that, you might want to invest in a nicer shoe with some more cushion for the road, but you shouldn't need to run in those every day in order to be comfortable. You should be able to put some zero drop shoes on and walk around or go for a short jog or, do some work on a track or something like that without your feet aching. So what I suggest for a lot of people is picking up something, a zero drop shoe, or I wear sandals a lot. So now that it's warm, I've been walking around in these. So you can see these are just super flat and, they just have a little bit of support on the bottom, but, they're completely flat. So I walk around in those pretty much all day or when I go for walks. And then if I'm going to run on the road, I'll put a more cushioned shoe on for the run. But I could run in those sandals for a few miles if I really wanted to. It wouldn't be the most comfortable thing ever, but my feet wouldn't flare up and my feet wouldn't hurt afterwards. So I don't need them. I don't need the shoe to run, but I just put it on because while I'm running, it's just more comfortable. But it's not to compensate for other issues that are going on. So, not to make this video too long, I'm going to try to drill through just some things that you could do, on a daily basis. If you're having pain in your feet and you do want to run or you do want to still walk a lot, but you're just having some aches and pains, what you really need to do is have some type of warm up, before your run or before your walk. You need to have some type of maintenance program, which I'll explain what that means, and then you could take some other, proactive steps throughout the day to make sure that you're not building up excessive inflammation and you have an ankle that is flexible and mobile and bends well. So you're less likely to have flare-ups and pain and something like plantar fasciitis. So the first thing I would suggest is making sure if you're going to run or walk for the day that you wake up and get really hydrated, first things first. So wake up, have a big glass of water before you're getting ready to walk or run. Make sure you hydrate well. Because if your tissues are dehydrated, it's going to exacerbate any issue that you have. Once, your tissue and your muscles get dehydrated, they are less bendy, they're less pliable, they absorb stress more poorly. So make sure if you're going to, be active throughout the day that you wake up and get hydrated. First things first, that will actually go a long way. Second thing is, when you're just going throughout your day, don't wear a big cushioned shoe. So if you're just walking around the house or you're just doing like yard work or just walking around outside or going for a short walk, try to pick up something like, slides or flats or sandals or flip-flops. So, people have probably heard of UFOs. So I like UFOs as a flip flop. It's like a memory foam flip flop, but they're flat. It's open. It's a flip flop, so your foot can expand and spread out, and it's not tucked tight and narrow into a shoe. So you could get like a flat sandal. So these I really like. These are called Earth Runners. So they're actually made for trail running. These are. And people do actually run trails in these. I just use them for walking around the house, walking around the yard, walking around the neighborhood, doing, it's like 3 miles or less of walking. Actually, as an experiment, I've walked up to 8 miles straight in these sandals. So I've kind of built up my feet to be able to handle, flat, thin sandals for up to 8 miles. Which I was getting in the beginning, I was getting a lot of blisters. My feet were not very comfortable after a few miles, but they've built up to be able to handle more stress. And it definitely, feels great when I'm working out. I feel like I don't have to worry about my feet as much. I just throw regular shoes on. If you're working out, just try to wear a flat shoe. So if you're doing like a regular cross training workout or a weightlifting workout or a circuit training workout, wear sandals, or if you need more support, wear flat shoes. Get zero drop or flat shoes to work out in. And then if you're going to run on a lot of pavement, then you can pick up a shoe that has a little bit more cushion, but make sure you're not wearing those big cushioned running shoes with a high drop for everything that you're doing. So don't walk around your neighborhood with those. Don't do yard work with those. Don't play with your kids when you have those on. When you're doing that stuff, put a zero drop shoe or a sandal or a flip flop on, to avoid compensating so much in that calf, ankle, and heel, where those shoes are trying to let all that stress off. You should be able to stretch your ankle and your calf and your foot enough to be in flat shoes, just like your feet were made to do. So the third thing would be to have a good warm up before you're going to go for a walk or go for a run, especially for a run. So you should have a warm up that addresses the flexibility of your ankle. So you should, if you have a foam roller, roll on your feet, roll on your calf, roll on your Achilles tendon, roll all the way through the hip and leg, and get everything just loosened up through there. So you can use a foam roller or lacrosse balls or whatever. Get into the foot, get into the Achilles, get into the calf. From there, you can do any type of calf stretch. So you could use a wall, you could use a wedge, you could just physically kind of stretch your calf. So I like to do this a lot, just circle and flex the foot and ankle a whole bunch of times, as much as you possibly can, to kind of prep that range of motion. So do big circles with your ankles, pump your foot back and forth. Use the stairs at your house to do like a slow calf raise to stretch in and bend that foot, and bend the toes and bend at the ankle. So make sure before you run, you really foam roll and kind of move around that ankle and the foot to just get some movement through there. And then you want to warm up your hips and your core. So if you could do a small circuit, 1 or 2 sets of some planks, some hip bridges, any exercise, single leg balance exercises to just start to wake up and warm up the hips and the core. I'll make a follow-up video on like a warm up for runners, but just try to warm up your glutes and your core, and you could do some planks or some side planks or hollow holds or bridges, and just get those muscles awake so that when you're running, they're not completely dormant. You're utilizing them more, and you're in a better postural position to run. The last thing would be like a more of a cool down maintenance type of program. So after you run, if you can foam roll again, get into flat shoes, ice your feet, so fill up a bucket with ice water, or take a really cold shower, or some type of cold plunge. And you can alternate between ice and heat throughout the day. So if you want to throw a warm compress on the Achilles or on the foot, and then occasionally ice it as well, do that and just roll around on your feet and your ankles and keep, circulation moving through there. So if you do all of those things, so, get into a more of a barefoot or zero drop shoe or sandal throughout the day, roll on your feet, roll on your calves, move around, stretch your ankles, calf raises, and just ice and heat and stretch. And you really, right now, if you're not doing those things and you just added a lot more running or walking or time on your feet might be a little bit cranky. So just make sure you wake up, get hydrated, roll on them, move them around, use, little ice baths for your feet. And then, if you warm up properly to run, so make sure you stretch your hip flexors, warm up your glutes, get your core involved, stretch out your ankles and your calves, and then do that, a mini version of that when you get back to cool down as well. It should alleviate a lot of your issues.